Hello and welcome to Scale Your Sales podcast. Now, as the Director of Global Digital Sales Development at IBM, my next guest manages a team and is responsible for helping companies digitally transform their sales organization. She's previously worked for Microsoft and has built a 2,000 person worldwide inside sales team, which is massive. Now, she is passionate about advancing women in sales and currently serves as Exec Co-Chair of Women at IBM New York City Group. Please welcome to Scale Your Sales podcast, Rakhi Voria.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, you know, we're all experiencing unique and challenging times. So what would be your advice to sellers to ride out the pandemic? And I know at IBM, there's lots of things as, you know, a leader of a team that you've had to do yourself. So perhaps you can share some of your experience.
Sure. I mean, I think this pandemic has altered the way that all of us have had to live and work. It's really upended a lot of our daily routines and having the opportunity to be in the office face to face. I think the most important thing and advice that I would give to sellers is to lead with empathy, because things are certainly not business as usual. And companies might be dealing with their own crises. They might be personally working from home while homeschooling their children. And so some of the typical methods, like reaching out to a customer over the phone, might not be as feasible during this current pandemic. So you have to sort of shift your messaging in a way that leads with empathy, that really tailors your solutions and offerings to help them during this time of need. And then, of course, just sort of change the way that you're even going about interacting with them. Like I said, we've been struggling reaching people over the phone as an example. So we have really found more success with email, LinkedIn messaging, social selling, etc. You almost have to give customers the flexibility to be able to reach out to you on their own terms, given the fact that everybody is so busy right now.
So have you had to change the times? If people are kind of fitting work around all of the other demands they might have at home, so they might actually start earlier than they would normally start, you know, within the office hours and later. Have you seen changes come through on that front?
Yeah, you know, I mean, I would say that it's really varied, frankly. There isn't anything that I could say 9 to 5 or, 12 to 2 works best for everybody, because it really has varied depending on people's personal situations. I would say for the most part, though, we are seeing more people working early in the morning, late at night. Maybe if they have kids, they're putting their kids to bed or whatever, then they have the opportunity to log back on, which is why email and things like asynchronous messaging is helping to give customers the flexibility to reach out on their own terms. One thing that we've done at IBM recently is we've rolled out something called asynchronous messaging. So typically, if you're a customer and you go to IBM.com, you can look at all the different solutions and you can chat with a live representative from my team. But because not everybody from the team is online 24/7, we now have asynchronous messaging so that customers can reach out 24/7. And maybe you don't have a live person available at all times, but you can leave a message, and shortly thereafter, when somebody logs back on, they'll reach out to you. And even though customers sometimes like having instant interaction where somebody's answering the questions right away, nowadays, I think with this new norm, people are more open to having somebody respond maybe an hour later or things like that, just because everybody is working kind of strange hours, I think, during this time.
I read in your notes that your team is very much at the kind of at the forefront, creating the experience and the real kind of first impression for the engagement people have with IBM. So what kind of onboarding or upskilling do you do to make sure that experience is consistent? Because a lot of companies have problems with that being really customer focused and really thinking about the initial experience and ongoing experience customers would have.
Absolutely, it's critical. So, you know, as you mentioned, my digital sales development organization, we're typically the first line of communication that a customer will ever have with IBM. So we're the front end of the sales cycle, and we're catching a lot of the inbound responses that are coming in through digital channels. We're doing the outbound prospecting to our white space customers. And because of that, I always say we're kind of the custodian of the IBM experience. We get to shape whether or not a customer chooses IBM now and typically in the future, and as you think about customer lifetime value. So with that, I think comes a very strong responsibility to skill up our reps in a consistent way, with globally consistent tools, processes, playbooks, standardized things to make sure that they get up to speed as quickly as possible. So I would say, IBM, we have a very robust onboarding program. We typically like to have our sellers on the phone by day 6, which I know is very aggressive, but it's an opportunity for them to practice and to learn. And really, the best way to be able to get effective in your job and skill up in your job is by engaging with real life customers, of course, with mentor and support and managers and everything holding your hand every step of the way. But I would say that we typically tend to adopt kind of an 80-20 rule, where 80% of everything that we do from a training perspective is global, with 20% that can be localized depending on what your go-to-market model is or whether or not you use business partners in certain areas, et cetera. So overall, I'd say pretty robust onboarding program. We have something called the IBM Global Sales School that every single seller goes through upon joining IBM. And it's really a great way to learn not only some of the tangible hard skills around selling, so how to communicate effectively, negotiate, persuade, empathize, but then also how do you actually skill up on the IBM portfolio and solutions? Because as you can imagine, there's a vast array of things that we sell, thousands of products, and so we want to make sure that our sellers are up to speed so they can support customers.
So talking about mentoring, tell me a bit more about your mentors. Who are the people that have really helped and guided you?
I would say that I have been very fortunate to cultivate a variety of different informal and formal mentors. And I always encourage people that I'm mentoring to think about it more as your board of advisors and having different people within your network to help you build different skill sets. Because for me, I know in the long run, I want to be running my own business. And so do all the people that are supporting me and mentoring me, are they helping me build different skill sets within my tool belt? So I would say that I have different mentors for different things. I have mentors who help me with functional things, whether it's helping me to understand IBM and how we sell. I have mentors who help me on the finance side. You know, it's an area of the company that I don't really know a whole lot about from investor relations perspective. So I want to make sure that as an executive of the corporation, I'm representing us well. I have people around me who can help me answer some of those questions. Then I have people who I reach out to for more career development types of topics. So as I think about progression in my own career, who are some people that I really admire who have navigated through their own career as well, and how can I learn some of their best practices and tips and tricks as they've sort of climbed various ladders in different industries. So I would say I tend to cast a wide net, I guess, but I would encourage everybody to think about what is it that you're really looking to do in the short term and the long term, and do you have the people in your network to support you? And the most important thing is you don't always have to find people who are more senior than you. There is a lot of beauty and value in having cross-generation mentorships. People who are younger than you in different industries and areas you might not have never normally considered, who can really help you to think differently, push the envelope, and call you out when you maybe are really regimented about specific areas.
It's interesting. I remember listening to your video, you know, Women in Sales, and you talking about an instance where you had to talk to another more senior woman about a situation. And I wonder, is it important for women in sales coming up the ranks to actually see and have other women to turn to?
Absolutely. I think, there's always the saying, you can't be it if you can't see it, right? And so it's so critical to have people who are in your function, who are women, who have figured it out, who you might be able to learn from, because every day is changing. I mean, the reality is in women in sales, sales has the second largest gender equity gap across all business functions. Today, only 1 in 5 vice presidents of sales are women. The number of women who are in sales has barely increased over the past decade. So there are some very real issues that women face in sales, and it is unfortunately today still a pretty male-dominated industry. So I think there tend to be certain gender biases in sales that still exist, although we are making a lot of progress, and there are many women like yourself who I know are helping to fight the fight. I personally am very passionate about this topic, primarily because I myself fell into sales. I was not targeting a role in sales. I ended up falling into sales because it was the recruiter at Microsoft who put me in the queue for it. And at the time, I myself had a lot of preconceived notions about the profession being very aggressive and competitive and male dominated. And fast forward, here I am, having had multiple sales roles, and have really flourished and enjoyed it as a viable and a worthwhile career path. So a big piece of that was having other senior women in sales to look up to, people who have paved the path and the way for people like myself, and have helped us to really think about how do we navigate a world like that. But the reality is, even if a company might still be male dominated, our customers are very diverse. And so many decision makers now are women. Many decision makers are 25-year-old CEOs. And so you sort of need sales populations that emulate what the diverse world looks like today from a customer buying set.
So do you think the fact that you're in role at a senior level, that there's things that you're identifying that you're enabling other women to come up the ranks?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, I personally have done a lot of work around why we need more women in sales, why women should consider roles in sales. I've published a couple of articles about this in Forbes. I actually have an upcoming article coming out on how to retain women in sales, because companies are making progress in terms of getting more women in the door. But if we don't have inclusive environments and cultures that are fostered to make it so that they can succeed once they get there, there's no point in making so much progress on the front end of the recruiting cycle. It has to be end to end. And so one of the things I think a lot about is, how do we make sure that we are providing sellers, women sellers, with the tools and the skill sets to succeed when they get there? Part of that is pairing them with a mentor, ideally a senior woman in sales mentor, as we had just discussed. Part of it is maybe enlisting them in career development programs, showing them all of the different opportunities and ladders and ways that they can go in their career. Sales is such a transferable and a marketable skill. And so I try to make sure that women understand that, because for me, if I even think about my own career development, I started in a traditional sales role, but I actually haven't been in a customer-facing direct sales role in a long time. I've helped build sales organizations. I now think about sales strategy, managing a sales team. So there's so many different directions you can go in, and we need to make sure that women understand what all of those options are. So those are some of the things that we've implemented at IBM to help our women sellers be able to thrive and to understand all the different avenues that they have for them.
I interviewed Laurie Richardson, who runs Women's Sales Pro,
Yeah.
and we were talking about the pandemic and sales, and perhaps having a view, and I don't know what you think, that the fact that we're having to adapt the way that we are selling, much more of it is at a distance, not face to face, and people are having to manage all of their challenges at home while working. Maybe this might give women the opportunity that they need, because they're able to kind of manage a lot of the challenges that they already have. There's, it's just a fact. Women often have more on their plate with responsibilities in the home. But actually, if you find that women that, or people that work from home are more productive, there's evidence to show that. But actually, they're now able to manage the challenges of home much better, along with managing a full-time job, because we're having to do it. So I wonder if this might create more opportunities to women to balance these things a lot better. I don't know what you think.
Oh, I truly hope so. And I think you're absolutely right, because one of the most attractive aspects of sales as a profession is flexibility. And that's something I tell women all of the time. I mean, as you said, unfortunately, I think this pandemic is disproportionately affecting women. It's exacerbating gender inequalities. We've seen this across the board, not just in tech, not just in sales, but really everywhere. So women are struggling. They're also being laid off and furloughed at a much higher pace than men are, unfortunately. So, we have to help women think about what can they do during this difficult time. And I think sales is a really great option because it offers flexibility, as we mentioned, but it also can be very lucrative in a way that allows you to do it based on your own time and your schedule for the most part. So a few years ago, Flex Jobs had published a recent study, and basically they had listed account executive as the #1 job with flexibility. And I think the median salary range for an account executive, they said, was about $98,000. And of course, depending on your company and the sales incentives and options that your company offers, it could actually be much more than that. It really depends. And that's why it's important to really understand your your company's incentive structure. But I absolutely agree. I mean, I really hope this pandemic helps people to think about the various options in sales. And the other thing is, I mean, it is such a transferable skill. As I said, if women don't like it, or if it doesn't end up being what you expect, the worst that could happen is you're walking away with some really important skills that you can leverage in whatever you do afterward.
Now, I want to talk about your mother. I want to meet your mother. My gosh, she is a force of nature.
She is.
And, I'm sure she is your key motivator. You said one of your aspirations is to run your own business. So tell me more about her and her influence.
Yes. Well, anyone who knows me has probably heard about my mom, because she has just been such a big force of influence in my life growing up. Basically, when I was very young, probably about 4 years old, my dad ended up leaving, and my mom single-handedly raised me and my 2 older sisters by herself. She was an Indian immigrant. She had never really managed the finances, had real jobs, etc., but she figured it out. She ended up working. Later, she ended up starting her own company. She's the CEO of the National U.S.-India Chamber of Commerce now. She always found ways, despite all of the issues that we were facing as a family, to be really engaged in her community, different economic advisory board councils, things like that. Recently, she was an advisor to Obama on minority and small enterprises. And so her story is just amazing. And I think, because of that, it has really shaped who I am. And it basically taught me that women can do anything. I was very fortunate to be raised by 3 strong women, and to have the opportunity to see that regardless of difficult situations that women tend to face, there is a way out. And it takes positivity, it takes turning tragedy into triumph, and it takes really having grit and aspiration to be able to drive change for yourself and for your family. So so I would say I've learned a lot from my mom, and, hopefully she is proud of me and my 2 older sisters for what we've accomplished, but she's been a huge force in all the things that we have done in our lives.
What an incredible influence you've had. Absolutely. Yeah. I'm sure she is very, very proud of you. So how can listeners get hold of you?
Sure. Well, there's a few different ways. I think the best way to connect with me is on LinkedIn or Twitter using my name. Otherwise, you can follow my articles on the Forbes Business Development Council. As I mentioned, I've written a few different things about women in sales. I've also written on millennials. career advice, things like that. And yeah, those are the best ways to stay connected. I really look forward to engaging with this audience and staying in touch with you.
Well, I will be putting the links in the show notes so listeners can get hold of you. It has been an absolute pleasure talking to you. I've loved hearing more of your experiences and your views, and I look forward to seeing you launch your own business. You certainly had an amazing grounding for all of that with your mother's experience. So thank you so much for being a guest on Scale Your Sales podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.